5 things you probably shouldn't do with your emergency fund. Most people think an emergency fund is simple. Save some money. Don't touch it. Feel responsible. That's why most people misuse it. An emergency fund doesn't fail loudly. It fails quietly, by giving people false confidence at the worst possible time. Here are 5 things you probably shouldn't do with your emergency fund if you actually want it to protect you. 1. You probably shouldn't treat your emergency fund like regular savings. This is the most common mistake. People lump their emergency fund together with vacation savings house, upgrades just in case money. They tell themselves they'll know the difference when the time comes. They usually don't. When everything is in one bucket, everything feels spendable. What you should do instead: separate it completely. Different account, different purpose, different mental rules. An emergency fund is not for flexibility, it's for protection. People who stay stable don't rely on discipline, they rely on structure. 2. You probably shouldn't invest your emergency fund. This sounds smart. It feels efficient. Why let money sit there doing nothing? Because emergencies don't wait for the market. When people invest their emergency fund, they're betting that nothing goes wrong, the market cooperates, and they won't panic. That's 3 assumptions stacked on top of each other. What you should do instead: keep emergency money boring. High-yield savings, cash equivalents, immediate access. Your emergency fund is not there to grow. It's there to keep you from making desperate decisions. 3. You probably shouldn't keep too much cash. Just in case. This one surprises people. They hear 3 to 6 months and decide more is always better. So they hoard cash indefinitely. The problem isn't safety. It's stagnation. Excess cash often becomes a fear response, a delay tactic, an excuse not to move forward. What you should do instead: size your emergency fund intentionally. Enough to handle real risk, not enough to freeze progress. Emergency funds are meant to create stability, not paralysis. Disciplined people protect downside and plan the next step. 4. You probably shouldn't use your emergency fund for almost emergencies. This is where the line blurs. A sale, a trip you need, an upgrade that feels urgent. When people dip into emergency funds for non-emergencies, they train themselves to ignore the boundary. The fund still exists, but the protection is gone. What you should do instead: define emergencies in advance. Job loss, medical issues, critical repairs. Decide the rules before emotion shows up. If you have to convince yourself it's an emergency, it probably isn't. 5. You probably shouldn't forget to rebuild it immediately. This is the most expensive mistake. People use their emergency fund correctly, and then move on. They don't replenish it. They assume they'll get to it later. Later is when the next problem hits. What you should do instead: rebuild immediately. Not perfectly, not aggressively, just consistently. An emergency fund is not a one-time task. It's a system that has to reset after impact. The part most people miss: emergency funds aren't about money. They're about behavior under pressure. They exist to stop panic decisions, to buy time, to protect momentum. Most people don't get into trouble because they don't know what to do. They get into trouble because they feel safe when they're not. If this made you uncomfortable, that's the point. You probably shouldn't treat your emergency fund like a vague safety blanket. You should treat it like a tool with rules. Subscribe if you want calm, disciplined advice that keeps you out of trouble, not motivation that feels good until something goes wrong. Because emergencies don't announce themselves, and the people who survive them best are the ones who planned without optimism.